"Your daughter can walk. She's just sad," said the homeless boy to the doctor. Dr. Michael Thompson looked over his daughter's latest test results with a heavy heart. For 2 long years, he had subjected Emily to every possible procedure, but no doctor could explain why an 8-year-old girl, with no detectable physical injury, remained motionless in a wheelchair. It was during another afternoon at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago that he first heard those words that would change everything. A boy of about 10, dressed in dirty clothes with messy hair, had managed to approach Emily's hospital room window. "Your daughter can walk. She's just sad," the boy shouted before security pulled him away. Michael felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How dare this street kid make such a claim? He, who had spent years studying neurology, who knew every muscle and nerve in the human body, was he supposed to accept a diagnosis from a dirty child who barely looked like he'd been to school? "Get that boy out of here," he ordered the security guards, turning his attention back to the medical charts. But Emily had reacted differently. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile lit up her pale face. Her usually apathetic eyes sparkled with a glimmer of life Michael hadn't seen in a long time. "Daddy, who was that boy?" she asked, stretching her neck to see through the window. "No one important, sweetheart. Just a lost child," Michael replied, abruptly closing the test results. "Let's go home." On the way back, Emily remained unusually animated, asking questions about the boy who had appeared at the window. Jennifer, his wife, noticed the change in their daughter's behavior, but chose not to comment. The last 2 years had been a minefield of dashed hopes and arguments over treatments. That night, as she tucked Emily into bed, Jennifer noticed the girl whispering to herself. She moved closer discreetly and caught fragments of an imaginary conversation with the boy from the window. "I wish I could play outside too," Emily murmured into her pillow. "But my legs won't listen." Jennifer's heart ached. How long had it been since she'd seen her daughter express any desire to play or interact with other children? Their days had been reduced to doctor's appointments, physical therapy, and the heavy silence of a home where everyone walked on eggshells. The next day, Michael returned to the hospital, determined to review all the tests again. There was something he was missing, he was sure of it. As he analyzed Emily's MRI scans, he heard a commotion outside. "Hey, window girl, are you there?" It was the same boy's voice from the day before. Michael stood up angrily, ready to call security again, but stopped when he saw Emily's reaction. She had turned in her chair with an agility he hadn't witnessed in months, trying to reach the window. "It's him, Daddy! It's the boy from yesterday!" Reluctantly, Michael pushed her wheelchair to the window. Outside, the boy waved cheerfully, as if this were the most natural meeting in the world. "Hi, my name's Tyler," he said, pressing his dirty hands against the glass. "What's yours?" "Emily," she replied, placing her hands on the glass from the inside. "That's a pretty name. Want to play with me?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Michael watched in disbelief as the two began playing through the glass. Tyler made funny faces, and Emily laughed in a way he hadn't heard in 2 years. The boy started telling a story about a little bird that couldn't fly, but discovered it could do other amazing things. "You know," said Tyler, sitting on the outer windowsill, "this little bird thought it was useless because it couldn't fly like the others. But one day it discovered it could sing so beautifully that it made everyone stop to listen." Emily listened intently, her eyes fixed on the boy. Michael noticed she was sitting up straighter in her chair, a posture she hadn't adopted in months. "Tyler," Michael called, opening the window slightly, "how did you get up here?" The boy met his gaze without fear, despite the authority in the doctor's voice. "I live nearby, Doc. I see a lot of sad people coming in and out of this hospital, but her..." He pointed to Emily. "She doesn't seem sick in her body, she seems sick in her heart." The boy's words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. How could a street kid make such a sharp observation? "And what do you know about heart sickness?" he asked, trying to keep his tone professional. "I know because I've had it too," Tyler replied simply. "When my parents left, my heart hurt so bad, I thought I'd never smile again. But then I met people who helped me remember there was still good inside me." Emily had leaned forward, absorbing every word. Michael realized that for the first time in a long while, his daughter was genuinely interested in something unrelated to doctors or treatments. "Where are your parents now, Tyler?" Emily asked. The boy hesitated for a moment but kept smiling. "They had to take a really long trip, but it's okay. I learned to take care of myself. And you know what else I learned? Sometimes we're sad for so long we forget what it's like to be happy." Jennifer had arrived quietly and witnessed the last part of the conversation. She watched Michael, who seemed to be wrestling between his medical reasoning and something he couldn't explain. "Michael," she whispered, "look at her." He turned to Emily and had to admit, the girl looked more alive than she had in months. Her eyes sparkled, her cheeks were flushed, and she gestured animatedly as she spoke with Tyler. "Tyler, will you come back tomorrow?" Emily asked. "If you want, I'll come every day," he replied, "but only if your dad says it's okay." All eyes turned to Michael. He felt at a crossroads. His medical training screamed that this was irregular, that it made no sense to let a street kid interact with his daughter in a hospital setting. But the part of him that was a father saw his daughter more animated than she'd been in 2 years. "We'll see," he said finally, closing the window. That night at dinner, Emily talked non-stop about Tyler. She recounted details of their conversation, mimicked the faces he'd made, and for the first time in ages, finished her entire plate without anyone having to coax her. "Jennifer," Michael said when they were alone in their room, "did you see how she reacted today?" "I did," she replied, brushing her long brown hair. "And you? What did you think?" Michael sighed deeply. In 12 years of marriage, Jennifer had learned to read his expressions, and she knew he was fighting his own convictions. "That boy said something I can't get out of my head," he admitted, "about her not being sick in her body, but in her heart. What if he's right? Jennifer, I'm a neurologist. I've spent years studying the nervous system. I can't just ignore everything I know because of a child's words." She turned to face him. "But what if those words are exactly what our daughter needs to hear?" The next day, Michael arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He wanted to review all of Emily's tests again, searching for any detail he might have missed. While analyzing the images on the computer, he heard familiar voices outside. Tyler had returned and was once again talking to Emily through the window. This time he had brought some colorful pebbles and was teaching the girl a game they could play even with the glass between them. "How you place the pebbles like this," Tyler explained, drawing on the ground. "Then you try to hit the one in the middle. When you do, you get a point and can make a wish." "What kind of wish?" Emily asked, trying to mimic his movements from inside. "Anything you really want, but it has to be something that depends only on you, not others." Michael stopped typing. There was something about the simple wisdom of that boy that unsettled him deeply. How could someone so young, with no formal education, make such profound observations? "Tyler," he called, opening the window again. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, Doctor." "Where did you learn the things you say?" The boy thought for a moment, playing with the pebbles in his hands. "On the streets you learn a lot. You learn to see when people are really hurt and when they're just pretending. You learn the difference between someone who's hungry for food and someone who's hungry for affection." "And what's the difference?" Emily asked, genuinely curious. "Someone hungry for food keeps looking at the food. Someone hungry for affection keeps looking at people, hoping someone notices they exist." Tyler's words echoed in Michael's mind. When was the last time he had really looked at Emily as a person, not just a medical case to solve? "Tyler, do you have a place to stay?" Jennifer asked, arriving with some fruit for Emily. "Yes, ma'am. There's a very kind lady who takes care of kids like me. Her name is Mrs. Henderson, but in the mornings I like coming here because there are lots of people who need a smile." "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "Oh, doctor, haven't you noticed? This hospital is full of sad people. Not just the patients, but their families, the doctors. Everyone seems to be carrying a heavy weight." Michael looked around, trying to see the hospital through Tyler's eyes. It was true. In the hallways, people walked with hunched shoulders, their expressions dark as if carrying the world on their backs. "And you think you can help with that?" he asked. "I can't heal anyone like you do," Tyler replied. "But I can remind people there are still beautiful things in the world. Sometimes that's all they need to remember how to get better. Emily had been silent, absorbing the conversation. Suddenly she spoke. "Tyler, do you think I'll ever walk again?" The boy looked her straight in the eyes. "Emily, I don't think you ever stopped being able to walk. I think you just forgot you wanted to." The words hit the small group like a bomb. Michael felt struck by a revelation his medical mind resisted, but his father's heart was beginning to understand. "What do you mean by that?" Jennifer asked. "It's just that sometimes we get so sad we forget we have choices," Tyler explained. "Like when I was too scared to leave the spot where I slept, so I ended up hungrier. But if you don't move, you won't find food." Emily remained thoughtful for several minutes. Finally, she said, "Tyler, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. Sometimes when I'm alone in my room, I feel tingling in my legs, like when you sit too long and then stand up." Michael and Jennifer exchanged surprised glances. Emily had never mentioned this before. "And what do you do when you feel that?" Tyler asked. "Nothing," she replied, lowering her head. "I pretend I don't feel it." "Why?" Tyler's simple question opened an emotional floodgate in Emily. Her eyes filled with tears. "Because if I say I felt something, everyone will get excited and want to do more tests, more physical therapy, more medications, and if it doesn't work out later, everyone will be sad again." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael felt as if he'd been slapped in the face. His daughter was hiding possible signs of improvement to protect her family's feelings. "Emily," said Jennifer, kneeling beside the wheelchair, "you don't have to protect us, sweetheart. We're the adults here." "But you get so sad when the doctors say they don't know what's wrong with me," Emily replied. "I hear you talking at night when you think I'm asleep. You cry a lot." Tyler had watched the whole scene quietly. Now he stepped closer to the window. "Emily, can I tell you another secret?" She nodded. "When my parents passed away, I stopped doing a lot of things I knew how to do. I stopped singing, stopped drawing, even stopped smiling. Do you know why? Why? Because doing those things reminded me of when I was happy with them, and remembering hurt too much." Emily wiped her tears with her sleeve. "That's exactly it," she whispered. "It hurts to remember when I could run. But you know what I realized?" Tyler continued. "Being sad forever didn't bring my parents back. It just made me forget all the good things they taught me." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Michael watched the conversation between the two children with a mix of fascination and discomfort. Tyler was making connections that he, with all his medical training, hadn't been able to. Even more unsettling was the realization that his own anxiety and desperation to find a cure might have made Emily withdraw even further. "Tyler," Michael said, his voice softer than usual, "you mentioned a woman who takes care of you. Mrs. Henderson, right? Do you think I could talk to her?" The boy seemed surprised by the request. "Of course, doctor. She's really wise. She always says that to help someone, you first have to understand what they're feeling, not just what's happening to them." Jennifer touched Michael's arm. There was a silent communication between them, built over years of marriage. She was telling him it was time to try something different. "Tyler, where can we find Mrs. Henderson?" Jennifer asked. "She works in the kitchen at the senior home next door, every day after 2 in the afternoon." "But why do you want to talk to her?" Michael hesitated. How could he explain that he was starting to question everything he believed about his own daughter's condition? "Because," Emily said, surprising everyone, "I think I need a different kind of help than what I've been getting." That afternoon, Michael and Jennifer left Emily with the nurse and walked to St. Joseph's Senior Home, just 2 blocks from Mercy General Hospital. The place was simple but clean and welcoming. They found Mrs. Henderson in the kitchen, a woman around 60, her grey hair tied in a bun, her calloused hands speaking of a lifetime of hard work. "You must be Mrs. Henderson," Michael said, introducing himself. "I'm the father of a girl who's been talking to Tyler." Mrs. Henderson's eyes lit up. "Oh yes, Tyler told me about the girl in the wheelchair. Said she needs to remember how to smile." "Mom, I'm a doctor," Michael began, "and I've been treating my daughter for 2 years. All the tests show she's physically fine, but she still can't walk. Mrs. Henderson wiped her hands on her apron and invited them to sit in the small living room adjacent to the kitchen. "Doctor, may I ask you something? How long has it been since you played with your daughter?" The question caught Michael off guard. "What do you mean?" "Played," without talking about medicine, without mentioning her legs, without asking how she's feeling, just played. Michael and Jennifer exchanged uncomfortable glances. They realized that for the past 2 years, every interaction with Emily had revolved around her condition. "I take care of 7 boys who came off the streets," Mrs. Henderson continued. "Each one arrived here carrying traumas I can't even imagine. You know what I've learned? Sometimes a person needs to forget their pain for a moment to remember there's life beyond it." "But how do we do that?" Jennifer asked. "By creating moments where the limitation isn't the center of attention. Tyler told me your daughter laughed so hard when he made funny faces at the window. When was the last time she laughed like that?" Michael had to admit he couldn't remember. "Tyler also mentioned she talked about feeling tingling in her legs," Mrs. Henderson went on. "That's a very important sign." "Why?" Michael asked, his medical instincts kicking in. "Because it means her body hasn't forgotten how to communicate with her. It means part of her still wants to walk, but another part is afraid." "Afraid of what?" Mrs. Henderson took a deep breath. "Doctor, may I say something that might be hard to hear?" Michael nodded. "Sometimes, when a whole family focuses too long on a tragedy, the child feels that if they get better, they'll take away their parents' purpose. They become everyone's life project, and deep down, they fear disappointing everyone if they recover." Her words struck Michael like lightning. He thought of all the hours he'd spent researching Emily's case, all the conversations with Jennifer about appointments and treatments, all the family decisions made around their daughter's condition. "What do you suggest?" Jennifer asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Let her be an 8-year-old who happens to be in a wheelchair, not a girl in a wheelchair who happens to be 8. "I don't see the difference," Michael said. "The difference is, in the first case, the wheelchair is just a detail in her life. In the second, the wheelchair is her life." Tyler appeared in the doorway, returning from some task Mrs. Henderson had given him. "Hey, Doc, how'd the talk with Mrs. Henderson go?" "Tyler," Michael said, "Mrs. Henderson explained some important things to us. I want to make you an offer." The boy stepped closer, curious. "How about tomorrow you bring some of your friends to meet Emily? Maybe you could all play together?" Tyler's eyes lit up. "Really? She can play with us?" "Of course she can," Jennifer replied. "She's a kid, just like you." "That's awesome. Can I bring Jason and Zoe? They live here with Mrs. Henderson too. Jason makes paper airplanes that fly super far, and Zoe makes up stories on the spot." "Perfect," Michael said, feeling a lightness he hadn't known in ages. The next day, Emily's hospital room turned into a little playground. Tyler had brought Jason, a 9-year-old with a gap-toothed grin, and Zoe, a 7-year-old with colorful braids and a wild imagination. At first, Emily was shy. It had been so long since she'd interacted with kids outside a medical setting. But soon, the 3 visitors pulled her into their games, treating her like any other child. "Emily," Zoe asked, "want to hear the story of the princess who lived in the tallest tower?" "I do," replied Emily, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a tower so high she could see the whole world from up there. But she was very sad, because she thought she could never come down to meet the people." As Zoe told the story, Jason showed Emily how to make little paper airplanes. Tyler organized a contest to see which plane would fly the farthest down the hospital hallway. Michael watched from the doorway, amazed. In just 1 hour of play, Emily had shown more energy and enthusiasm than in months of physical therapy. "Doctor," said the head nurse, approaching, "Miss Emily seems much livelier today. The difference is remarkable." "Yes," agreed Michael. "It truly is." That afternoon, the children taught Emily a game that could be played without leaving her chair. It was a variation of charades, where each person had to act out an emotion and the others had to guess. "My turn," said Emily when it was her time. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made an expression of pure happiness. "Joy!" everyone shouted in unison. "You got it!" she said, clapping her hands. It was then that something extraordinary happened. In her excitement, Emily instinctively tried to stand up from her chair to celebrate more energetically. For a split second, her legs held her weight before she realized what she was doing and let herself fall back into the chair. The silence that followed was absolute. All the children had seen it, but no one knew how to react. "Emily," Tyler said softly, "do you realize what you just did?" She nodded, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. "It happened without me thinking," she whispered. "And how did it feel?" Zoe asked. Emily took a moment to answer. "I felt like myself again." Michael, who had witnessed everything from the doorway, felt his heart race. But this time he controlled his reaction. Instead of rushing to examine Emily or asking medical questions, he simply smiled and said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Now, how about we keep playing?" From that day on, a routine was established. Every afternoon, Tyler and his friends visited Emily. They played, told stories, had paper airplane contests, and gradually, Emily began to rediscover herself as a child. Meanwhile, Michael and Jennifer started sessions with a child trauma specialist, not just for Emily, but for the whole family. Dr. Sarah Wilson was a woman in her early 40s, with a gentle but direct approach. "Dr. Michael," she said during one of the family sessions, "I'd like you to tell me about the day Emily stopped walking." Michael took a deep breath. It was a painful memory he had analyzed medically hundreds of times, but had never processed emotionally. It was a Sunday. Emily was playing in the yard, chasing the dog. She tripped and fell, hitting her head on a rock. It wasn't a bad fall, but she got scared and cried a lot. "Go on," encouraged Dr. Sarah. I examined her right away. There were no signs of serious head trauma, just a small cut that needed a few stitches. But on Monday, when she tried to get out of bed, she said her legs wouldn't obey her. "And what was your reaction?" Michael hesitated. "I panicked. Not as a father, but as a doctor. Immediately, I started considering every neurological possibility. Delayed head trauma, undetected spinal injury, post-concussion syndrome. And how did Emily react to your panic?" "She got even more scared. She started crying, saying she didn't want to be examined, that she just wanted her legs to work again." Dr. Sarah turned to Emily, who sat quietly, taking in the conversation. "Emily, do you remember how you felt that day?" The girl nodded. "I was really scared. Daddy looked so serious, and Mummy started crying. I thought I'd never walk again." "And what happened when you thought that?" "My legs got even stiffer, like they heard what I was thinking and just gave up trying." Dr. Sarah made a few notes. "Michael, Jennifer, do you see the cycle that was created? Emily got hurt and felt afraid. You became afraid of her fear. That fear made her even more scared, which in turn made you more afraid. In that cycle, there was no room for healing, only for keeping the problem going." "But how do we break the cycle?" Jennifer asked. "By creating new patterns. Moments where fear isn't the main focus. And you've already started doing that with Tyler's friends visiting. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Over the following weeks, the family's routine changed dramatically. Instead of focusing only on medical treatments, they began prioritizing moments of normalcy. Michael learned to play the games Tyler had taught him. Jennifer organized little picnics in the hospital garden. Emily started laughing again. And with the laughter came small physical improvements. First, just the tingling she finally admitted feeling. Then, tiny involuntary movements in her toes when she was distracted playing. Gradually, without fanfare or expectations, her body began remembering how to function. One day, while playing charades with Tyler and his friends, Emily got so excited trying to act out Butterfly that she completely forgot her limitations. She stood up from her chair, spread her arms like wings, and took 3 small steps before realizing what she was doing. This time, instead of panic, there were cheers. Tyler and his friends celebrated as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Michael and Jennifer, watching from the doorway, exchanged a look of deep gratitude. "How do you feel?" Tyler asked. "Like a real butterfly," Emily answered, tears of joy in her eyes. But healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, days when the anxiety returned and Emily closed up again. Those moments were hard, but now the family had tools to handle them. They knew it was part of the process, not a failure of treatment. During one of these relapses, Tyler did something no one expected. He asked to be alone with Emily for a few minutes. "Emily," he said, "can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" She nodded. "You know how I said my parents went on a really long trip? Well, they're actually gone forever. Like when people get so sick they can't stay here with us anymore." Emily held his hand. "That must be so sad." "It is. And you know what I did for the first few months after they left?" "What?" "I pretended they were still here. I saved food for them, talked to them, even left the door open at night so they could come in. Because it hurt too much to accept they were gone." "What happened?" Mrs. Henderson explained that pretending they were still here wouldn't bring them back. It would only stop me from living the life they'd want me to live. Emily stayed quiet for a long time. "Tyler, do you think I'm pretending I can't walk so I don't have to face something?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Only you can answer that, but can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What's the one thing you'd want to do most if you could walk again?" Emily thought carefully. "I want to run in the backyard with you all. I want to hug my parents while standing up. I want to be able to help other kids the way you helped me. Then why not try? Because I'm afraid I'll fail and make everyone sad again." "Emily, can I tell you a secret Mrs. Henderson taught me?" "Go ahead." "Sometimes we don't try something not because we're afraid of failing, but because we're afraid of succeeding." "What do you mean?" "Because when we succeed, everything changes, and change is scary, even when it's good." Tyler's words struck something deep inside Emily. She realized part of her fear wasn't about not being able to walk. It was about walking again and having to be a normal kid, with normal responsibilities and expectations. That night, Emily asked to talk to her parents. "Dad, Mom, can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetheart," said Jennifer, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I think I know why I couldn't walk." Michael felt his heart race, but kept his reaction in check. "Can you tell us?" "It's just, when I was in the wheelchair, you were always close to me. You took care of me, worried about me, did everything for me, and I liked being cared for like that." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "And now? Now I understand you'll still love me even if I can walk, and that I can still be cared for by you without needing a wheelchair." Michael knelt beside his daughter's bed. "Emily, sweetheart, you've always been and will always be our special girl. Walking or not, you're perfect to us." "I know, Dad. Tyler helped me understand that." The next day, Emily made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I want to try walking today, but I want to do it my way, at my own pace, without rushing." And so, on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in the garden of Mercy General Hospital, Emily Thompson rose from her wheelchair and took her first conscious steps in 2 years. She walked slowly, holding Tyler's hand on one side and Zoe's on the other. Her parents watched a few feet away, tears streaming down their faces but giving her space. "How does it feel?" Jason asked. "Like I'm flying," Emily replied, taking a few more steps. It wasn't an instant miracle. Emily still needed physical therapy to strengthen the muscles she hadn't used. There were still moments of doubt and fear, but now she had something she didn't before, a genuine desire to heal. In the weeks that followed, Emily's recovery became an inspiration at the hospital. Other doctors came to observe her progress, trying to understand how such a simple approach had achieved results that complex treatments couldn't. Dr. Sarah Wilson documented Emily's case as an example of how emotional trauma can manifest physically, and how healing sometimes requires more than traditional medicine. Emily's case teaches us that healing isn't always where we look, she explained in a presentation to the hospital staff. Sometimes the key lies in letting a child be a child, in creating safe spaces for emotional expression, and remembering we're whole beings, not just bodies to be fixed. Tyler and his friends kept visiting Emily even after she started walking again. The friendship born in a time of need grew into a genuine, lasting bond. Mrs. Henderson was invited by Michael and Jennifer for dinner at their home. During the meal, she noticed how the family had changed. "You all seem like different people," she remarked. "We are different people," Michael admitted. "Emily taught us that sometimes the doctor needs healing as much as the patient." "How so?" "I was so focused on finding a medical solution that I forgot to look for a human one. I was trying to treat the symptoms without understanding the emotional cause." Jennifer added, "And I was so worried about being the perfect mother to a child with special needs that I forgot to simply be a mother." "And I," said Emily, who had been listening to the conversation, "was so afraid of disappointing you all that I ended up disappointing myself." Tyler, who was also present at the dinner, raised his glass of juice. "Then let's make a toast." "To what?" asked Jason. "To second chances," replied Tyler. "To discovering that sometimes the most complicated thing in the world has the simplest solution." "And what was the simplest solution?" asked Zoe. "Remembering that we're a family who loves each other," said Emily, standing up from her chair to hug everyone around the table. Months later, Michael had a conversation with Dr. Robert Anderson, a fellow neurologist who had followed Emily's case from the beginning. "Michael, I have to admit I was wrong about your daughter," said Dr. Anderson. "I kept insisting there was some neurological issue we were missing. Actually, Robert, there was something we were missing. It just wasn't neurological in the way we thought." "How so?" "It was neurological in the sense that Emily's brain had created a protective response to emotional trauma, but the solution wasn't in medication or procedures. It was in creating a safe emotional environment so her brain would allow her body to function normally again." Dr. Anderson reflected on his colleague's words. "That changes my perspective on many cases I've considered unexplainable." "It should. I've learned that sometimes what we think is unexplainable is just something we're trying to explain the wrong way." Emily's story spread through Mercy General Hospital and then the local medical community. Michael was invited to present the case at conferences, always emphasizing the importance of treating the patient as a whole, not just the symptoms. Tyler, meanwhile, discovered he had a natural talent for connecting with hospitalized children. With the support of Mrs. Henderson and Michael himself, he started a volunteer visitation program at the hospital, bringing joy and companionship to young patients. "Tyler," Michael said during one of these visits, "have you ever thought about studying medicine?" The boy, now 12 and visibly more mature, smiled. "I have, doctor. But I want to be a different kind of doctor." "What kind?" "A doctor who heals smiles as well as bodies." "I think you already are that kind of doctor," Michael replied. "And when you grow up, if you want to study real medicine, I'll help you get there." Michael's promise wasn't just generosity. He had recognized that Tyler possessed a natural medical intuition that many trained professionals lacked, the ability to look beyond symptoms, connect emotionally with patients, and find simple solutions to complex problems. Emily, now 10, had developed a passion for helping other children going through difficulties. She and Tyler created a small group at the hospital called Joy Buddies, where they visited young patients and organized activities to make the hospital experience less scary. "Emily," asked a 6-year-old girl hospitalized with a broken leg, "how did you manage to walk again?" "You know," Emily replied, sitting beside the girl's bed, "the secret wasn't learning how to walk again. It was learning to want to walk again." "What's the difference?" "The difference is that when you truly want something, your body remembers how to do it. When you only think you should want it, but are actually afraid, your body gets confused." "And how did you stop being afraid?" "I met people who showed me I'd still be loved even if I couldn't do it. And that gave me the courage to try." The little girl grew thoughtful. "Do you think I'll be able to run again once my leg heals?" "I'm sure of it," Emily replied. "But if you want, while your leg heals, we can play lots of fun things that don't require running." And so, the cycle of healing continued. Emily, who had been healed by Tyler's kindness and wisdom, now used her own experience to help other children. Michael watched these interactions with deep admiration. His daughter had grown into an empathetic, resilient, and generous girl, qualities she might not have developed had she not gone through the experience in a wheelchair. "Jennifer," he said one evening, as they watched Emily play in the backyard with Tyler and his friends. "Have you ever thought that maybe all of this happened for a reason?" "What do you mean?" "Maybe Emily needed to go through this to discover her purpose in helping others. Maybe I needed to learn how to be a more compassionate doctor. Maybe our family needed to learn to value what truly matters." Jennifer observed the scene in the yard. Emily ran freely, her blonde hair flying in the wind, her laughter echoing through the air. It was an image she had once thought she'd never see again. "You know what amazes me the most?" she said. "What?" "Emily doesn't seem like a child who went through trauma. She seems like a child who grew wiser because of a difficult experience." "That's true. She has an emotional maturity I didn't have at her age." "And Tyler, that street kid no one took seriously, became the catalyst for a transformation that affected not just our family, but dozens of other kids at Mercy General." Michael nodded. "It made me rethink a lot about prejudice and how sometimes the most unlikely people have the most important lessons to teach us." Mrs. Henderson had become a frequent presence in the Thompson household. She and Jennifer had developed a deep friendship, rooted in shared wisdom about parenting and overcoming hardships. "Mrs. Henderson," Jennifer asked one afternoon over coffee, "how did you know Tyler could help Emily?" "Truthfully, I didn't," the older woman admitted. "But Tyler came home that first day saying he'd met a girl who needed to remember how to smile. He has this ability to see what people truly need." "Where does that wisdom in him come from?" "I think it comes from pain transformed into compassion. Tyler has endured losses too great for a child his age. He could have become bitter, angry, closed off. Instead, he chose to use his pain to understand the pain of others." "How do you do that? Turn pain into compassion?" Mrs. Henderson thought carefully before answering. "I think it happens when we realize our suffering can have meaning if it helps ease someone else's." Tyler found purpose in his own pain when he discovered he could use his experience to help other children. Jennifer reflected on those words. She thought about how the 2 years of anguish their family had endured now held meaning, as they had become a source of understanding and support for other families facing similar struggles. One day, nearly 3 years after Tyler and Emily first met, the boy arrived with news that moved everyone. "Everyone, I have something important to say," he announced, gathering the Thompson family in the living room. "What is it, Tyler?" Emily asked. "Remember how Dr. Michael said he'd help me study medicine if I wanted to?" "Of course," Michael replied. "Well, I talked with Mrs. Henderson and we decided I want to start preparing for it. I want to study hard so I can get into medical school in a few years." The silence that followed was filled with pure emotion. Michael stood up and hugged Tyler. "Son, you can count on me for whatever you need. We'll find the best teachers, the best courses, everything necessary." "Thank you, doctor, but there's one condition." "What is it?" "I want to keep visiting the kids at the hospital while I study. I never want to forget why I decided to become a doctor." Emily joined the embrace. "Tyler, when you graduate, we'll be your first patient family." "Actually," Tyler said, smiling, "you already are. You're the ones who taught me that medicine isn't just about curing diseases. It's about healing people." Years passed. Tyler, with Michael and Mrs. Henderson's support, became one of the top students in his school. Emily graduated in child psychology, specializing in helping children who had gone through trauma similar to what she had experienced. Michael changed his medical approach, always remembering to treat the patient as a whole. He wrote a book about Emily's case, which became a reference for doctors dealing with psychosomatic conditions in children. Jennifer returned to work, but chose a field that allowed her to help families in crisis. She became a family counselor, specializing in supporting parents of children with special needs. Mrs. Henderson continued caring for at-risk children, now with the support of a small foundation Michael and Jennifer had created. Henderson House became a model for shelter and social reintegration. One Sunday afternoon, 10 years after Tyler and Emily first met, the whole extended family gathered to celebrate Tyler's graduation from medical school. "Tyler," Michael said, raising a glass, "when you were a 10-year-old boy shouting at the hospital window, you had no idea you were changing so many lives." "Actually, Doctor," Tyler replied, now a young man of 22, "I wasn't trying to change anyone's life. I was just trying to make a little girl smile." "And you did so much more than that," said Emily, now a 20-year-old psychologist. You taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is simply be there. Mrs. Henderson, now 70 but still vibrant, watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Do you know what moves me most about this whole story? What, Mrs. Henderson? Jennifer asked. It's seeing how everyone here found their purpose through hardship. Michael became a more compassionate doctor. Jennifer became a more empathetic counselor. Emily became a more sensitive psychologist. And Tyler became a doctor who heals with his heart. And what about you? Tyler asked. What was your transformation? Mrs. Henderson smiled. I learned that sometimes being a mother isn't just about caring for your own children. It's about caring for all the children who need a mother. You've given me a much bigger family than I ever imagined. Tyler stood and asked for everyone's attention. I have an announcement. I received an offer to do my medical residency at a very prestigious hospital in another city. It's an incredible opportunity. The group fell silent, slightly worried about a possible farewell. But, Tyler continued, I've decided to turn it down. I want to do my residency right here at Mercy General Hospital where it all began. Why? Michael asked. Because this is my home, you're my family, and I want to keep caring for the children in this community. I want other kids like me and Emily to have the chance to find healing and hope. Emotion overwhelmed them all. It was the perfect closing of a circle that had begun with a street kid shouting at a hospital window. Tyler, Emily said, do you know what my first question will be when you become a doctor? Which one? Dr. Tyler, your patient can walk. She's just sad. Everyone laughed, remembering the words that had started this whole journey of transformation. And do you know what my answer will be? Said Tyler. What? We'll figure out together how to make her smile again. The end can now tell me, what did you think of this story of resilience and love? Do you know someone who's been through a similar situation? If this story touched your heart in any way, leave a sincere comment below. Do you believe love and patience can heal wounds that medicine alone cannot? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me on this heartfelt journey. Don't forget to like this video and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories to warm your heart.